Our special guest in the studio this week to talk particularly about brands and branding is Rita Clifton, who, as I said, is a leading expert on brands, and here to talk about that area and take your calls and questions as well. So if you want to put a question, then call now. Let me give you a little bit of background about Rita. Tell me if I'm getting any of this wrong, Rita.
I can't kick you from here.
Early career in advertising, during which time you became vice chairman and strategy director at Saatchi & Saatchi. Later became CEO and then chairman of brand consultancy Interbrand. 2013 became co-founder and chair of Brandcap. Awarded the CBE in 2014 for services to the advertising industry. That's quite a list, and we want to hear your thoughts, obviously, on branding. We're asked all the time about what is a brand and what's the definition, and I'm sure we'll get on to that. But whilst we're talking about what's been happening at the moment in the news, I wanted to ask you about Tesco, because they're having a bit of a bad time. They are in the press today as the most complained about supermarket. They've got an AGM tomorrow. They are a bit of a tarnished brand at the moment, aren't they?
They are a bit. I mean, how the mighty have fallen is what you tend to say about Tesco. The other thing I tend to say about Tesco is that they felt a bit like the Margaret Thatcher of retailing, if I can put it that way. That they were respected for such a long time, but they were never loved. Now, the problem with that is that, when you're successful and you're riding high and everything else, that's okay if you're just respected. The problem is when you put a foot wrong, when stuff goes wrong, if people don't like you, they queue up to give you a good kicking. And that has been the real problem with Tesco. Now, I think there are some other analogies there. I must say, if you think about, the Conservative Party, just thinking about the Thatcher thing, this thing called the shy Conservative, the shy Tory voter? I'm tempted to think now you've got the shy Tesco shopper. It has become not very cool to say that you shop at Tesco, because Tesco have had this litany of problems. I mean, not only loss of market share, but also problems with their suppliers. They've had some rather dodgy accounting. I mean, there's been a whole string of stuff. But they've got their own Dave now. They've got their own drastic Dave Lewis, just like, I guess, the Conservatives had, their own Dave Cameron, and he is doing some very, very interesting things. This is a guy, he wasn't just a, traditional retailer, he is a brand guy. He comes from Unilever, and he looks at business problems as being, who is my customer? How are we going to make them happy? He also gets the fact that if you're in a service business, you've got to get your own people feeling good and confident and happy, because if you've got happy people, they're going to look after your customers. So I think he's doing some really good things. He's moving the head office. That's symbolic. He's getting stuff cleaned up. That's also very symbolic. He's hiring some very good people. The problem is they've got lots of stores in the wrong sizes, in some of the wrong places. There's a lot of really practical stuff to do. But above all, they've got to get people to like them again. They've got to be the consumer champion. And I think they could still come back. People were a bit quick, weren't they, to go, that's gone. But it's a very, very strong business. We should remember that it's still the biggest supermarket in the UK.
Tesco ... Who do you think is doing a great job out of the supermarkets in terms of their brand?
Oh, you have to say Aldi and Lidl, don't you? I mean, these are big disruptors. And, of course, people like Tesco, Morrison's, these are the disrupted. And, of course, Sainsbury's having a lot of problems as well. I mean, these businesses who had super powerful CEOs, they leave, their successor comes in, maybe, finds some issues. They do what is known as, as kitchen sinking it, getting all the stuff that might have been sort of hidden under piles over the years. They get all that stuff out. They dump all of those problems, and they restart the business. So we'll see how those go. But you've got some serious disruption going on with Aldi and Lidl. These are, they've created a new category, the discounters. I mean, what a great title that is. Immediately people are thinking, these are giving me great value. And they're building their quality on top of that. Great products. You would have seen the TV advertising at Christmas, like all the big classic retailers used to do. They are doing some impressive stuff. And it also just shows that in some categories are going, unless you are online, digital, blah, 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 you can't beat the competition. Well, Aldi and Lidl, they weren't great online retailers. They just came in with a really great offer. And the others are really having to up their game, not only in terms of price, but also in terms of overall customer experience. That is the only way to win in every market. You've got to look after your customers. You've got to wrap yourself around your customer, and that's how you generate a sustainably successful business. It's the only way.
Secrets to success of a brand and a business, I think.
Yeah.
Know your customers.
And they are actually loved as well, aren't they? And people say, oh yeah, I love Aldi or I love Lidl. They'd actually say that in a way that they wouldn't
say about Tesco. I love this Tesco Shy Shopper. No, I love it.
Yeah.
Who wants to say that I'm there? Which, if you're Tesco, that's mortifying, because what you never want is your customers to be reluctant to say that they shop with you. So if you were giving a little bit of advice to the new Dave, what one thing would you say to him? Right, do this one thing and you'll get that love back again.
Make people feel good about carrying a Tesco bag around. I mean, he's doing some good. You've got to look after your people. You've got to look after your suppliers. You've got to be seen to be fair. You've got to have fair prices and everything else. But Tesco used to be really good at innovation as well. They used to be good at innovation. This whole every little helps philosophy that they had, while they were, going abroad, expanding, finding new, new territories, they kind of stopped investing in their UK customer. And if you don't look after your customer, as I say, you're not looking after your business. And that is the bottom line.
Rita Clifton is with us, and it's the business show here on LBC. If you'd like to join the conversation or put a question about your business and how you go about branding your business, then we'd like to hear from you. 0345 6060 973 is the number. This is LBC. I'm Clive Bull, and the time is 9:16.
Worldwide.
Key to success, look after your people, quoting Rita.
Oh, good.
LBC, I'm Clive Bull, and you are listening to The Business Show. We have Rita Clifton with us. We're talking about brands and branding, and Emma Jones is here, our business expert from Enterprise Nation, and lots of calls coming in. If you'd like to join in, 0345 6060 973. Texts and tweets as well. Quick mention here of Maggie, who has just emailed to say, listening to you from Montreal, Canada, regarding IKEA. Our Montreal branch has a delivery service that includes constructing the pieces of furniture once it's been delivered.
No.
So for once, we're ahead of the game over here.
Oh, good on you, Montreal. We want that here.
Yes. Here's a quick tweet question from Kate as well, who says, Clive, enjoying the show. I wondered if your guests know much about trademarking for artistic companies. Is it worth trademarking, or is it okay to leave your artistic work under automatic copyright laws?
So, Kate, it's Emma here. Hopefully you're still listening. Difficult to kind of know what it is you're doing, but definitely worth having a look at trademark protection. I don't know what you're offering. If it's designs, then get a design. There's 4 forms of patent protection. I won't go into this in too much detail. The highest form is patents. Then it's trademarks. It costs about £150 to register a trademark. You can do all of it via a government agency called the Intellectual Property Office. So if you go to ipo.gov.uk, you can search for trademarks, register trademarks, because copyright doesn't really stand up in a court of law. So if you want that extra bit of protection on any design or any artistic work that you're doing, it's worth registering a trademark or a design, which costs about £60 per design. So have a look on ipo.gov.uk. It's a fantastic source of information, but definitely worth having a look at if you do want to protect those assets.
OK, thanks, Kate. Let's go to Alex in Reading. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
Hi, Alex. What would you like to say?
Well, first I would say, for the comments with the budget retailers, you're absolutely bang on with, actually I went to Aldi a couple of weeks ago and found a bottle of cider which was 75p, whereas in Tesco's it was £3. But my specific comment, specific question, was with, so I have an idea which I have the skills to take it through to market, but it relates very specifically to existing brands. So in terms of getting my foot in the door to market it within those brands, how would I go about that?
So could you talk a bit more about what the business is? I'm not sure I altogether understand what the business would be. What's the proposition? So if I'm a customer and you're coming in to talk to me, what's your proposition?
Okay, so this is with a high street brand, so I don't want to give too much away. But so it's with the high street brands, there's approximately 4 different major competitors within the market. And so I work as a web developer. It's working within my scope, where within technology, and it's essentially opening a new market and within the specific brand I want to sell it to. But if I was to actually...
The trouble is, Alex, unless you tell us what it is...
Alex, I can feel you. It's Emma again here. I can feel you not wanting to tell us, but the only way we can help is if you tell us a little bit more. But bearing in mind you are live on radio.
You don't want to give it away.
And your competitors may be listening.
I mean, there are a few really, really clear principles, whatever business you're going to go in. Number one, you've got to be clear about what it is that you stand for. So whatever your proposition is, you've got to be able to say it really clearly and simply with a straight face. So working out what it is that you stand for is one thing. And then secondly, making sure that everything you do, from the product itself to the way you look after customers, service people, the whole experience that people might have with you is got to be consistent with what you stand for. And then you've got to keep on renewing and everything else, because you might have a great idea for a technical product or a technology product one day, but the marketplaces are littered with the corpses of technology-based businesses that go up like a firework and go down just as quickly. You've got to think about what the whole brand experience is around any individual products, because individual products go off. They go obsolete. You've got to think about what you're building around that that's going to have some long-term value.
Alex, thank you. I hope that helps. Whilst we're talking about that, just discussing the idea of a brand, it often comes up, this issue of what actually is a brand. Is it the person? Is it the logo that you're clearly saying there? It's not just a product.
Yeah. It's not just a product, because of course products come and go. I mean, there's a great saying which is, people die, buildings fall down, products and services become obsolete, but the thing that that lives on if you look after it properly is the brand. So the way I define a brand, I mean, it's a business asset, just like lots of other assets, but it's the organising principle for a business that makes you distinctive, makes you special, makes you stand out, and frankly generates some long-term sustainable value. So if you're trying to add value to any kind of day-to-day process and cost in a business, you need to think about yourself as a brand. And that is as true as if you're a start-up business, that, if you want to leave your business to a family member or a colleague or whatever, you need to be building a brand. It can't just be about what you're doing, every day. It's got to be about the whole business that you might want to live on. So it's an organising idea for a business that makes everything you do as distinctive as it can to make your business as valuable as it can be for the long term.
Now, Rita, I'd love to get your views on one thing, because we help lots of people start their business, and at start-up stage, so much of the brand and the business is around the person themselves. So why they started the business, their story. We'll hear later from an entrepreneur who's even got his name in the title of the product. You used to work for Saatchi & Saatchi, which has also got the name of the founders. When it's the individual starting the business, how much do they put into, whether it's the title, the brand itself? Because I guess then there's an issue if they, as founders, move on, how does that brand live on without them? So how do you kind of separate, or should indeed you separate, the person with the brand of the business?
Well, it's a very important decision when you begin a business, whether or not it's going to have your name or whether or not you're going to make up another name. And the issues are obvious, which is that you're not going to be around, in 50 years' time or 100 years' time or whatever, but you do hope, if you're ambitious enough, that your company might do. Now, there are loads of companies, famous companies in history, that have still got the founder's name. When you think about Hewlett Packard, for example, McKinsey. I mean, there are many, many businesses that still have the name of the founder. Ben & Jerry's, we're going to talk, I know, about, another interesting product later, but, they were the founders. They created a story around their company. It happened to be around the individuals, but actually, because of their principles, because of the way they did business, because of the specialness of how they were doing business and their story, other people have been able to take that business on and manage it very well. the thing is, you just have to make sure you are clear about what it is that you stand for that is going to have some long-term value. It can't just be about you as a sole trader, because people are not brands. Even, David Beckham, if you think about him, I mean, what's interesting there is that Beckham brand has become like a long-term phenomenon. Yeah. I mean, you've even got sub-brands now. You've got, the Beckham family, the young Beckhams, who are doing interesting things, and they're doing modelling and so on. The Beckham brand is a long-term brand, because you can imagine what that might leave in the future. A little bit like, David Lloyd. Remember, he used to be a pretty, if I might say, 3rd or 4th division tennis player.
But was a great fitness entrepreneur.
But was a great, because he productised himself in a way that was relevant to what he had done in his life. And he thought, right, what can I do with my skills? I'm great at, the whole fitness thing. And he passes those qualities, those special characteristics into a business for the long term. And people who go to David Lloyd Leisure, they don't expect David Lloyd to be their personal trainer, but there's a system and an offer that he was the face of that is then multiplied. So even if it's about you initially, you've got to make sure that you are developing some kind of methods, tools, unique intellectual property that actually you can then build for the long term, that can be delivered by other people. And a good definition here is, how is your business going to make money while you sleep? That is a big test.
That's a good one. 0345 6060 973 is the number. We'll take more calls in just a moment. Rita Clifton is with us. Emma Jones, our business expert. And if you'd like to join in, then give us a call now. The Business Show. I'm Clive Bull. LBC News Time is 9:30. We're going to bring in now Jim Cregan from Jimmy's Iced Coffee, who founded the company with sister Susie. In 3 years, it went from a backroom experiment in a Dorset cafe to a recognised brand, stocked by Tesco, Ocado, Whole Foods and others. Let's say good evening to you, Jim.
Good evening, Clive. You've just done the whole pitch for us. Thank you very much.
There you go. Yes, and I
no
did
charge.
it in a sentence.
Hello, Emma. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jim. It's lovely to have you on. I saw your wonderful tweet earlier, which I think is all part of your wonderful, friendly brand. I think you said, "Yo, dudes, I'm on LBC in 30 minutes talking branding," and I just thought, it's so Jim.
Well, everyone has a dude in them somewhere, so you might as well address them as that.
So, Jim, tell us, is this because you've built this wonderful brand called Jimmy's Iced Coffee? We were talking about you a little bit earlier. Your name is actually in the brand name itself. And what I want to know is, when you started the business, did you think, I want to build a brand or I want to build a business? Where does the brand come into your business? Is it everything? Is it strategic things that you and Suze talk about? Where does it appear in your business?
I think branding now is so kind of vast, because it covers all of your. It's kind of any touch point really for any consumer that's going to come and interact with you. So whether it's online through any kind of social stuff through Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all those things, or whether you come and see us at a music festival, or someone comes and hands out a carton of Jimmy's Iced Coffee and gives it to you in the street. Or any kind of touch point is what the brand is all about. So, when I guess building the business just, it's quite a tough question, really. They both go hand in hand, but I don't know. I think it's quite a complicated one. But they both, you've got the business side, which is actually all the money, the building the company, the employees, the place of work, and everything, and then you've got the brand, which is kind of an extension of everything that we do. So,
it's really interesting. Howard Schultz, who is the CEO at Starbucks, what he says is, I don't run a business, I run a brand. Because to him, It's all the same thing. It's how you go to market in a distinctive way and make sure, as you say, every single touch point is working for you to build that business for the long term and generate a bit of distinctive, sustainable value. It's really interesting, isn't it?
One and the same. And Jim, one of the things with you, and I know we just kind of had a giggle about your tweet, which you probably tweeted yourself saying, "Yo, dudes."
Yes.
When you get to a size where Jim can't be managing the social media anymore, how will you get people who still use the same tone? Because I guess your tone, your language that you use, it's all part of the brand. Is that something that you think is a concern as to how will you get someone who speaks like Jim?
I've actually finally found the answer, Emma. And the answer is to have someone who's basically, I've got some gaffer tape and we're going to strap them to me. And what's going to happen is they're basically going to narrate what I'm up to. So I don't have to actually sit there and type away a lot of the day or take Instagram photos or reply on Facebook. There'll be someone with me side by side who, rather than me saying, tonight I'm doing this, is going to be tonight Jim is going to be doing this. And it'll all be in the same tone of voice, but because we've got the joy of things like photographic things like Instagram, there's, rather than me taking a photo of something, there might be actually a photo of myself doing something. And people really like to see the person behind the brand, and I'm not a fan of taking selfies of myself. The selfies make me want to be sick.
I can't believe you are the man saying this. When every Startup Saturday, when I deliver the startup course, we go onto your website because I love your About Us page because it tells the story as to why you came up with the coffee, joining up with Suze, where you're now selling it. Jim, on your homepage, every picture is you bare-chested with cold coffee down you, Jim doing a rugby move, Jim doing something, and we love it because it creates smiles, which again is the brilliant thing of your brand. It makes people feel happy, etc. So I do love the fact you don't like selfies when you're all over your website. But that thing about making people smile, because I know you've done a couple of things on your packaging to make sure that the brand kind of also appears on packaging. So kind of tell us what you've done, and again, is that all part of let's make sure this brand goes across everything we do?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Innocent are the kind of the godfathers of that. They started it, and now you go onto a Southwest train, and you go into the toilet of the Southwest train that says, "Do not block this toilet with laptops, mobile phones, house bills, your wife's dressing gown, or whatever." And it's quite funny and things, but I think everyone's kind of just jumping on that bandwagon. And we do a few bits on our packaging. There's now a photograph of my face. So people can actually understand that there is a bearded man who wears a hat 24 hours a day, who actually runs this business with his sister. And then we've got little slogans, kind of like "Shake me like a Polaroid picture," which is one of the things which we might get sued by Outkast for, because it's a lyric from a hip hop track. So yeah, there are all the touch points, and then it does expand into things like our kind of office, for example. So in our office, we've got a skate ramp which kids can use on the weekends, and we have a pizza oven and a full working kitchen so that people can, cook their own food rather than going out and getting a crappy sandwich. And it is all of that.
Well, that is very much exactly what you were saying, though, isn't it? It's sort of painting the whole business the same colour.
Making your people happy. It's exactly what you said earlier.
Absolutely is. And of course, sometimes when you're asked to speak about branding in the digital age, you've got to put some inverted commas around that, haven't you? Because it's becoming one of those things. And they expect you to show sexy YouTube videos and lots of interesting social media campaigns, which you're very happy to do. But here's the killer insight about branding in the digital age. You've got to be a damn good business in the first place, where your people care what they're doing, they're committed to what they're doing, they'll tell other people that they love what they're doing, because of course everything counts. Absolutely, I totally agree with what Jim's saying. Everything counts, every touch point counts, inside and outside, and you can't be a smiley customer service organisation on the outside or try to be if you're an axe murdering culture on the inside. It just doesn't work. It does help if your people love what you do, and clearly Jim's business people love what they do.
Jim, thank you very much. Good to talk to you. Jim Cregan from Jimmy's Iced Coffee, and we'll continue in a moment. LBC, I'm Clive Bull. The time 9:46. Yes, Ian Collins will be here at 10 o'clock. Right now you're listening to The Business Show here on LBC. I'm Clive Bull. With me is Emma Jones, and in the studio is Rita Clifton, co-founder, chair of BrandCap. And we're talking about branding particularly. If you want to join the conversation, there's still time. 0345 6060 973. I thought we should talk a little bit about what the smaller business person should be doing in terms of branding, because I guess even our caller, the lawyer there with his one-man legal practice, I mean, should he be worrying about being a brand?
If you're trying to do anything that's going to last beyond your lifetime, you need to think about yourself as a brand. And often people say to me, yeah, but this branding thing, it's all very well, but of course I'm in business to business and branding is less important, or otherwise I don't have big fat advertising budgets or whatever. But here's the thing, the role of branding in business to business is actually even more important than it is in the consumer sector. And the reason is people have got to trust you. They've got to trust you, and also they can't look like an idiot when they're recommending you to somebody else in a business, because your reputation, your business reputation, which after all is the thing that's going to generate sustainable salary and, and financial return for you, people have got to be able to rely on you. So business-to-business branding is very important. And then it's just about how you do it. And in this case, your behaviour is your communication. It really is about when you're in front of people, how are you going to be distinctive? Now, obviously, the visual bits of branding are important, but they've got to do justice to whatever the substance and the distinctiveness that you've got lies beneath. So you've got to think about how to answer the phone. How am I in front of clients? How do I look after people, after our clients, in a distinctive way? What sort of people are we recruiting that's going to build some sort of distinctiveness and difference in our business? Are you going to answer the phone saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so," or is it going to be "Good morning"? I mean, you've got to think about your tone of voice right across the piece. Are you going to be a, high-profile, trusted brand, very courteous and dignified, or are you going to be, hey, a bit groovier and a bit more sort of modern business, or indeed like Jim's Yo Dudes? But this has to be a conscious choice and not just by accident. What people are trying to do, what sort of training programs you're going to do to make sure that they are doing distinctive things. You don't have to spend a lot of money on advertising. You've got to think through the whole experience. Start from dot, and the dot is, what do we stand for? How are we different versus our competition? How do we really express that so all our staff know about it, even if you've got a staff of 5? And how do they make that show up through everything they do, every contact they've got with a client, every time that they are making, for example, doing innovation? There is a really interesting business that if you're trying to build a business, even in a quite unglamorous sector, you should have a look at. It's called Xero. And this company is about accounting software.
Yes.
And their proposition, their difference is about beautiful accounting software. Now, if you can make accounting software sexy and interesting, you've really, really got it going on. So it's really interesting. They've talked about it looks beautiful, it's easy to use, it's a beautiful experience, it's a really distinctive word attached to that category that otherwise people will think is very, very boring.
That's really interesting, because we've worked with Xero, and every person you meet from Xero is very happy to work at Xero. So it keeps on coming back to, if the people feel the brand, that resonates. Another lovely thing they do, by the way, and we were talking about this when we spoke about Tesco sadly losing it, and the recent news on Tesco is that they're the worst people to pay their small business suppliers, which nobody likes that story. When Xero buy stuff, they buy it from a lot of their customers. So if they're doing corporate events, they'll try and find their customers who can do corporate catering. And all of that resonates with small businesses who are then more likely to buy from Xero. So as you say, it's got to be consistent across your supply chain, your people, the clothes that you're wearing when you go to trade shows. It's just got to be consistent. But you do feel this is possible for small businesses to do this on a budget. So this doesn't involve huge expenditure. It is just more about deciding this is who we want to be for whom, and let's be consistent across it.
Yes, but of course it does help if you've got customers or clients who love you and people that, who love you too, your own people, because, your own people are going to be your best ambassadors, your best salespeople. If they tell other people because they believe in what you're doing, that is a very, very cheap way of marketing. You don't have to spend lots of money on advertising campaigns if you've got a great product and service and people feel it. If you've also got clients who love you, you can ask them to recommend you. There's all sorts of things you can do to build this momentum. If it's a professional relationship, a professional type offer, LinkedIn's good. If it's more retail or fashiony, you've got lots of possibilities now on Pinterest or Instagram or whatever. The key thing is to think about, where are my customers? Where are they going to be? Who are they? What are they doing? What are they interested in? And that will start to tell you what your, whether it's social media strategy or your marketing and sales strategy is going to be. You've got to understand that customer. First and foremost, if you don't get your customer, you won't get a long-term business. That is the only way.
And understanding them, do you think that with social media, so the tools you mentioned, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, etc., do you think it's becoming quicker to be able to build a brand now?
Without a doubt. It's quicker to be able to build a brand, and it's much quicker to be able to, lose that brand as well. I mean, if you just think about some of the technology brands, do you remember Palm? when Palm was it.
Used to have one of those.
Yes, we were all
Yes.
tippy-tapping away, weren't we? And I remember listening to the marketing director who was really groovy at a conference. 6 months later, the business was on the floor. If you also think about Nokia, I mean, Nokia was a top 5
BlackBerry.
most valuable brand in the world.
Yep.
Just a few years ago,
Yep.
and now that brand is pretty much dead. Absolutely, BlackBerry. Where was that? So the thing is, you've got to think beyond the product, and that is a really, really good story for any small business who thinks it's all about the product. The product will become obsolete. It's what you build around that, the relationship you've got with your client, and the trust that you build up, because you can use that trust, use what you know to extend and develop the business and keep on renewing it. And we were talking about Jim's business earlier.
The iced coffee.
He does amazing stunts and everything else. Keeping that up is going to be the real test for that business. Constantly showing up in interesting clothes with an interesting idea, interesting propositions. You've got to keep up that energy, because that's how you keep your market share up. Otherwise, you're going to be another one of those businesses that goes up, is popular for a while, and then it goes off.
Which, of course, is not going to happen to Jim. I hope he's still not listening as we're kind of saying, how will he keep up that energy? But you're right, it is that kind of constant innovation. And a really interesting opportunity we're seeing for small businesses at the moment is international trade. So China is a huge market. We're taking 40 businesses there in October. And already we know that a lot of Chinese consumers, billions of Chinese consumers, are looking for made in Britain branded products and services, creative services we were talking about before. Do you think kind of the Made in Britain brand, going back to what we just said, will this have long-term resonance? Is this a fad, or will the Made in Britain brand be something that just emerging economies will keep on wanting?
Made in Britain is definitely not a fad, because obviously, we're not a faddish nation. I mean, we have built up a reputation for stability, probity, integrity, trust. And yes, creativity. I mean, the 2012 Games were a fantastic walking, talking TV commercial for Creative Britain and, Open Britain and so on. It was a really, really fantastic marketing campaign for us. So we're riding high. We've got the classic traditional, you can trust us, we're British. And also we've overlaid that with some dynamism, some creativity and everything else. We have got a lot going for us at the moment. We've also got great brands, of course, out in China, in Asia and all over the world. I mean, Burberry is amongst the top 100 brands in the world. They have combined what I've just said in spades. Classic tradition, beautifully made clothes, and also an extraordinary digital presence. They are so imaginative and so creative about how they use online. That collision is absolutely what Britain's about. That's what we've got to sell, and a lot more.
Well, we're out of time. Rita, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Rita Clifton, Emma Jones, we'll see you next week. Another business show coming up at the same time here on LBC. Now, don't forget, you can download the LBC app if you've missed any of today's show. There's also TuneIn Radio, and don't forget our podcast service at lbc.co.uk. Coming up at 1, it's Nick Abbott, but next on LBC, Ian Collins. 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 Ian